and I thank my colleagues for the courtesy for Ms. Wamberg. The current health standards in the district are lacking in a number of areas. When I joined the board, I began the process to review the standards. By putting together a working group of local and national experts, we were able to provide a unique and in-depth foundation upon which OSSI has developed draft standards that are currently in field test. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from our panels, and I want to, in particular, thank the Young Women's Project for their leadership on this issue. They've done an incredible amount of work along with other stakeholders, and with that, I will ask you to introduce yourself and give your testimony. We'll start on your left here. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening, President Jacobson and other board members. My name is Abigail Kerner. I'm a junior at Woodrow Wilson High School and a peer educator at the Young Women's Project. I've worked on health education standards revision since I started working for YWP. I applaud OSSI, DCPS, and you guys for being inclusive of youth in this process. Although I'm pleased overall with the current draft of the health education standards, I believe it would be beneficial to pay more attention to the needs of special groups and to sexual consent and sexual abuse. This advisory, I am enrolled in health class. Though some valuable information is being taught, students aren't able to retain it because it is not related to real life. Health is real life and should be taught as such. Learning that HIV is a scary virus that attacks the immune system is very different from describing the impact it has on a community. One way to ensure that the real-life application is taught is to make sure we are teaching the standards in a hands-on way. Many standards were changed to say demonstrate instead of describe, which takes away from possibility for hands-on learning. Starting all health education at a young age is another critical part of our standards. I have gone to DC public schools since kindergarten, and I did not receive any health education until middle school. Even then, we jumped into topics my peers and I did not understand and were not ready to talk about. Education should not come by surprise. And instead, starting in kindergarten, kids need to be gradually introduced to health, their bodies, and later sexual education. As a peer educator, I noticed the terrible lack of sexual education in high school students who are already having sex. At 16 years old, a person should know that you can't get pregnant from swallowing sperm, and that having strong pull-out game is not a good way to prevent pregnancy. However, these are misunderstandings I personally correct every day at school. The new health standards allow students to learn about sex and their bodies before unknowingly putting themselves at risk. Drug use, violence, decision-making, and nutrition should also be introduced to students in health class in ways they understand. Consent is another important issue for me as a teen and as a peer educator. I have found that students have no idea what consent requires in a sexual encounter. Friends have mentioned the sex eyes as a means of consent. However, a facial expression can never explicitly tell a partner what you are or are not comfortable with. For this reason, it is imperative for teenagers in high school to receive education about how to ask for consent and how to voice your boundaries to a potential partner. I believe that we need a standard that gives youth the skills to get consent and communicate what they want from a sexual relationship. The sex eyes won't cut it. I'm concerned that so many mental health-related standards were removed from the high school section of the health education standards draft. I feel that our mental health standards directly referencing disadvantaged and LGBTQ communities could remarkably change the lives of DCPS students. We're living in a city where 30% of youth under the age of 18 are living in severe poverty, and a society where being lesbian, gay, transgendered, or somehow different can make school a dangerous place. We can all agree that school should never be a dangerous place for anyone, which is why standards like these should be considered for the DCPS health curriculum. These standards are really unique because they were written alongside real DCPS students who were able to give input throughout the process. Every time we met, we discussed what was missing from health classes, the crazy things we hear from our peers due to their lack of a health education, and how boring and ineffective these classes are. The Young Women's Project is a youth-based organization with ideas meant to benefit youth. These health standards will change the lives of DCPS students by giving us an opportunity to learn about our health. It is truly an unfortunate reality that without the Young Women's Project, I would be a year from my high school graduation without a basic understanding of anything included in these standards. I would also like to add that we need more time to address all of these issues. OSSI just released their graduation requirements proposal, which have 1.5 credits for both PE and health. It is crucial that health receive 1 entire credit on its own. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. Hello, President Jacobson and other board members. My name is James Peters, and I'm a senior at Bell Multicultural High School. One thing I have been working on since last year is revising the DC's health education standards. This is something that we brought to the board last year, and you have been very supportive of our inclusion in this work, so thank you. Today, I would like to talk about the statuses of DC's new health education standards and their implementation in 2016 and the 2017 years. Although we are very pleased with the newest draft of the RC Health Education Standards, there are a few changes that I would like to discuss. Every section of the new health education standard is very important for students to learn about. I am concerned that the number of standards in high school mental health section has been reduced. Body image is something that affects me personally. We all go through it, but I didn't even know that it affects others until I started my research prior to the development of the new health education standards. In school, we don't talk about what we see on TV or the models that affect our self-esteem. Self-esteem is a very important concept to learn and analyze in school. However, the RC revised draft of the new health education standards removed the standards that state that a child in elementary school should have the ability to demonstrate approaches and skills in how to respect your own and other people's body. This concept is needed early on to create the basis of good self-esteem. In fact, self-esteem is so important that poor self-esteem can lead to other problems like suicide. As a peer advocate and peer educator, I know that young people have the ability to analyze problems in the city and work to help solve them. The revised draft of the new health standards remove key concepts in the mental health section that will encourage students to analyze some of the city's health systems and be a part of the solution. For example, the following standard is removed: analyze the supports and barriers to accessing mental health resources. Youth know what is stopping people from seeking mental health resources. Another standard that was removed was demonstrate techniques to help a peer deal with difficult emotions, including anger and stress. Youth need to be used as resources for helping these peers deal with health issues. The new standard will really help youth. It is something that is going to affect their life. It will only affect youth if we have enough time in health classes to learn about it. RC just released their graduation requirements proposal, and we still only have a 0.5 credit requirement for health. With all of the topics that we need to learn and skills we need to practice, we want to increase the requirement to 1 whole credit. Thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony, and I hope you take all my points into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello, President Jacobson and fellow board members. My name is Rahel Midexa, and I'm a junior attending Columbia Heights Education Campus. I'm here to testify about the current draft of the health education standards, with special emphasis on the mental health issues that immigrant teens face, as well as traumatic experience that many teens in DC face. Although the current draft of the health education standards does address many health challenges that DC youth have, they can be more responsive to the needs of special population and trauma-inflicted youth. I'm here to ask why OSCE chose to remove some of the population and trauma-specific standards. The United States is facing a significant challenge in serving the immigrant youth. With over 1 million entering a year, they are entering public schools in record numbers. Often, the youth face culture shock, poverty, and will have to quickly adapt to a society they have never known. I'm speaking from experience because I was one of those students who felt displaced in my own school. I came to America at the age of 9 from Ethiopia. I was very young and felt out of place with children who are accustomed to customs unlike mine. I felt reserved and they seemed free. I barely knew how to speak English, so it was a huge barrier for me. I never truly received a proper education in high school, and I always tried to avoid it because it was an uncomfortable subject. I wish that I had learned to embrace my individuality and my diversity as an immigrant so that I could have wasted less time in conforming with what I saw. This is why I question OSCE's decision to remove the following standard. Identify resources dedicated to helping special populations, like immigrant youth, cope with mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and overstress. With this, we guarantee that youth in these groups will know where to go for help, and that their special circumstances are taken seriously. A particular problem for immigrant youth is that many cannot communicate with their parents because of an acculturation gap that emerges between generations over time. As an immigrant student, I didn't know how I could possibly learn in a classroom when I couldn't cope with my surroundings. I was becoming stressed and I wanted to go back to my home country. Many DC youth go through traumatic life experiences that disrupts their life and can affect the way they interact with their families, teachers, friends, and communities. Trauma could also come from living in a constant resource scarcity. For instance, some teens come from a poor neighborhood and some are sexually and emotionally abused. In the current draft, there is one standard that deals with trauma. It reads, evaluate effective strategies to cope with fear, stress, anger, and trauma. But the standard might be hard to apply if youths can define traumatic experiences and trauma and identify causes and indicators of trauma, which was a standard that was removed from this draft. When one of the standards is taken out, it creates a confusion, since youth have to evaluate something they might not understand. In conclusion, I want to thank OSSI for this great draft of health education standards. I would also like to relay James and Abigail's ask. We need more time to learn all this. This is why I urge SBOE and OSSI to add 0.5 credits to health classes as a graduation requirement. Thank you for listening to my testimony.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Jabron Tong. I'm 17 years old, and I currently attend School at Wall Senior High School as a senior. I also live in Ward 8 of Washington, D.C. I'm here to talk about the importance of addressing mental illnesses in our health education. Health class did not prepare me for stress or for my depression. Life as a teen got rough, both inside and outside of school. Life got tense, and I felt the whole world was collapsing on me. My grades dropped, I became less attentive and less social. There were times where we would break down completely and nearly cry for almost the entire day. Luckily, my mom noticed how I had changed, and eventually we got help from a therapist. I had no clue how to get help on my own, and I was even afraid to talk to my friends and family. When I first told a classmate, they thought I was just trying to get attention. I soon realized I was not alone, though. YRBS reports that 31% of high school females and 19% of high school males have felt so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more that they stopped doing some usual activities, like I did. If I was clueless about how to deal with my depression, then there are many other teens that also need the information and skills. Talking about mental illnesses is a very uneasy topic for most people. For example, for African Americans seeking mental health help by seeing a therapist or something of that nature, you get this false idea that you're crazy or something is wrong with you. That's why, after reviewing the latest update of OSSI's health education standards, I was pleased that the following 2 standards were included. 1, analyzing the stigma of mental health illnesses in various cultures, and describing the impact that culture and community can have on mental health conditions. Having a good mental health education can help students avoid becoming overly stressed and can teach students how not to make bad decisions in order to cope with their stress. As I am mentioning, I struggle with depression, and I wish that my education would have taught me what I was going through and how to deal with it. I'm glad to see that in the current draft of the standards, students will be able to learn to describe the signs and symptoms of depression, as well as identify techniques for managing mental and emotional health challenges, like depression, stress, and grief. Teens lack proper knowledge on mental health, and that's why it's so important that the Office of the State Superintendent on Education and the D.C. State Board of Education pass and implement the revised health education standards as soon as possible. We also need to increase the 0.5 credit for health to a full credit, so that teachers will have the proper amount of time necessary to teach these standards. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you all for spending your night here. I know that you have a lot of other places you could be, and it's incredibly important that you come out here because you're not just speaking for yourselves, you're speaking for your classmates, and you're speaking for youth and students across the city, and we greatly appreciate your time. Do board members have questions for the panel?
I don't have a question, but I do appreciate, I want to again extend appreciation to you all for speaking so clearly and cogently on the problems that you are facing and the kinds of issues and solutions that you presented. So thank you for coming out.
Ms. Wattenberg and then Ms. Lord.
Also, thank you so much for speaking so much from your heart, and I learned a lot from this. I just have one comment, which is to our last speaker, which is I am very sympathetic with your point about putting these in the health standards, but I'm curious, it strikes me that the school should have been there in a bigger way, apart from the health standards in terms of counseling services and so on, and to be there so that students can identify themselves as in need of some counseling. And I'm just curious, to all of you really, just very quickly, because I want to get you out of here, whether that's a problem in your schools, the lack of inadequate availability or inadequate knowledge of that being available.
There isn't a lack of availability. It's for me personally, it was the lack of being comfortable talking about it. When it all started around my junior year, I wasn't very a communicative person to begin with. I didn't talk to many people. I guess you could say I was kind of a loner. It was what I was used to as being an only child. But I wouldn't blame the school for the school and the counselors for not being there for me. It was just I wasn't comfortable talking to them.
If I could add, I go to Wilson, so there's a ton of kids all the time and very few counselors available. So each grade has, I think, well, starting at sophomore year, there's 2. Freshmen have 1, juniors have 2, seniors have 2. So as you can imagine, it's kind of a fight to get an appointment with one of those counselors. So I'm sure for a student seeking any type of help from counselors, it's difficult. I've tried to speak with counselors about college and career stuff, and there's really no time for any assistance.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I wanted to add something. The thing is, when you're not comfortable as a teen, you go to a certain kind of people to talk to, and different teens appeal to different kind of emotions. So although it's 50% of, are responsible to kind of find an adult, we need a special hand to come and reach and to show us that we do have these resources, we do have these people, because we do appeal to different kind of emotion, different kind of techniques so that we can express our problems.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Jolly from Ward 8.
Very quickly, I wanted to say first, thank you so much for coming down. I teach government, and I would be thrilled if my high school students came down and testified in front of the State Board of Education. Some of them are watching tonight, so they heard that. But I just wanted to say, I'm so proud of you guys just for coming down and identifying an issue that is really important to you and for testifying. Second, I wanted to refer to something that Rahel said. And I just wanted to reassure you, I specifically noticed something that you said about the standard being changed to evaluating different methods of dealing with trauma, and that being a change from defining what that is. So the assumption when standards are written is frequently that you write them at the highest level with the idea that teachers, in the way that they roll out that material for you, will do that. So it's not being taken out so much as it is being elevated, but obviously for a teacher to be able to teach you to evaluate the effects of a traumatic event, you have to know what some of those are. They have to teach you what different ways of coping with them are. So the idea, from a wonky teacher standpoint, is that it's implied in there that we have to do that for you. It's just making sure that you're being able to do more than just define the words like you would on a test where you do multiple choice, and that you're able to take those definitions and use them for real in your life. But thank you, because that was an actually really important reminder for teachers that we need to do that. So thanks.
Ms. Whittington, 5
Okay.
minutes.
Yes. Hi, you guys. As a high school senior, I totally understand what you guys are talking about here. One specifically being, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. Yes. One specifically being Abigail. I understand that, as you say you're a junior, right? I know that like a lot of people go through stress and things like that, and I didn't realize like a lot of public schools and charter schools really don't have health classes for us to understand that. And you hear about like students in your school like committing suicide or depression or cutting themselves, and that's really important. So like I commend you all. Thank you for like coming up here and saying that. I hope that my colleagues take this into consideration, because I haven't got like health class since elementary school, and they told us like stop smoking, and that was kind of it. So I really appreciate that you guys came up here and acknowledged, especially the ones that were missing up here as well. Thank you.
Ms. Lord.
First of all, I'd like to echo the thanks of my colleagues and to congratulate you, because engaging and advocating, studying, I think this is what we would call in competency-based education a demonstration of proficiency and performance. So on that score, I give you all A pluses. I'm trying to get my head around how you as students experience health education. It's one thing to look at the standards, but the delivery of education is a very different matter. And to your point, Ms. Kerner, you know, the whole idea of the standards changing to demonstrate from describing implies a much deeper level of understanding. But if it's not being taught, if you're not receiving the information in a certain way, if you're not having safe spaces to discuss things, then sort of the standards are only as good as the delivery. So I'd like to just get your ideas on, you know, what are some of the good lessons you've had so far? Where would you beef up health education, maybe in the middle school, maybe in the high school? And are there things that you identified in the standards that really are lacking? We had a young man talk about he wants to be equipped to handle gun violence when someone pulls a gun. Is he taking out the garbage? And I'm not sure a standard gets at that. So anyway, anybody who wants to answer.
You guys want to? Okay. Well, I guess I'll start. So I really liked what you said about having a safe space. I really agree with that the first part of having a quality health education is having a safe space to do it in. And I think that starting that education, a really strong and kind of intensive health education at a younger age would start kids with the idea that they're in health class. Like, it's okay to talk about sex. It's okay to talk about violence. This is where we can ask questions. This is where we can learn what we need to learn. And I think starting small lessons about violence in kindergarten, where like if you see someone doing something suspicious, what do? You go find a trusted adult that you can talk to, and that kid will know for the rest of their life, okay, that's suspicious. I need to think, what did I learn, and how can I apply that? And I think that with every other part of health education, that's applicable, you know. And with the idea of demonstrating something, I mean, even just learning about safe sex, a condom demonstration is not that hard, but I'm enrolled in health class cis advisory. I just took my midterm today, actually. So, and if I didn't work for the Young Women's Project, I wouldn't know how to put on a condom for the rest of my life. DCPS would not have taught that to me. So I think it's really important to have a physical demonstration, a physical analysis of how we're learning about HIV now. This is a virus. This is what happens to your body. But this is what happens to people in real life. This is what they look like when they're going through it. So.
Anybody else?
And also you mentioned something as the standards as good as the delivery. So maybe like teachers, you know, who teach it, like, I mean, there are some old-fashioned teachers who, you know, who kind of have their own ideas of like sex is bad, that's it. But maybe like having teachers who are kind of open to new ideas. I liked what Abby said, the condom representation, and then also like having teachers, like making teachers connect with students, like teachers who'd go out of their way, you know, to kind of talk about what really goes on in life. If you can connect school with life, then, you know, students will be more interested in expressing themselves.
To touch on what you were asking us, for me, for last year when I took health, we talked a lot about nutrition and different ways of exercising to better ourselves health-wise. But the issue for my health class was timing. We only meet twice, maybe 3 times a week, depending on the Fridays. And we focused mostly on nutrition and then into exercise and then yoga. And by the time it got to learning about sex and mental health, we didn't have enough time. So that's why all 4 of us agreed on extending the health credit requirement to a full year credit.
Thank you. Let's go to, do any board members on this side have a question? Ms. Wattenberg, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, just one quick one. Both of you have talked about increasing from a half a credit to 1 credit, and of course, one of the big complaints about DC high school requirements is there's a huge number of them, more than I think in any other state. And so you're content, though, with just losing yet another half of an elective in order to get this done?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And also, I feel as though that with the credit far as talking about that, it's like it's a lot of different things that needs to be discussed with the mental health standards. So I feel as though adding the extra credit is just giving us more time to talk about all the issues that we brought here today to you guys to talk about.
Thank you. I would love to do multiple rounds. Unfortunately, we've still got another panel to question and a panel waiting after that. Ms. Williams, Vice President Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to keep this brief. So are you really asking for 1/2? Would it be better just to give you a whole credit for health, or if we initiate health earlier in your educational process so that you can cover multiple topics over your lifetime in school? Is that what are you asking for specifically?
Well, we're kind of asking for just a more continuous health education overall and the full year health requirement in high school, because health is just such a critical part of who we are as people. We are all healthy individuals, so we need to learn about it. But I think the most critical part of what we're asking is that it starts at a younger age, because even if once we get to high school, the credit is still only 1/2 of a year, then we'll have our whole 10 years of education to support what we're learning at that moment.
Anybody else? So would it have helped you if you had instruction or support earlier in your high school, in your life?
I believe so, yes. The first time I ever took or even learned about health was in my high school junior year. So I think it would benefit if it started out earlier on.
Thank you. Oh, again, thank all of you for coming out. It's been so informative. Thank you.
So I think there's a common thread that I'm seeing here in the issues that you all have raised, and that's an issue of stigma and of shame among all of these health issues: body image, depression, sexuality, mental health issues, suicidality. I've dealt with a lot of these issues myself. I've dealt with suicide. Thoughts of suicide. I've dealt with addiction, and I've dealt with depression. And my goal here, and I want you all to know, and I want your colleagues, your peers to know, my goal is to do whatever we can, as much as we can, so that students in school today don't go through what I had to go through when I was younger, and can make better choices throughout their lifetimes. That's what this is all about. And you have my commitment to continue to work on these, to make even incremental improvements wherever we can, and to keep working collaboratively so that we can get these done, even if it's not everything we want, to get something better in our classrooms so that students can have a better start to their adult lives because they're prepared at the school level. So you have my commitment on that. I hope you will be at our Student Advisory Committee. We're doing a joint meeting with the Public Charter School Board Student Advisory Committee and the State Board of Education Student Advisory Committee. I hope you'll invite your peers to come to that. And I encourage everyone who's watching tonight to support these efforts to get better standards in our schools so we can help you all. With that, I'm going to dismiss this panel and call up our friends from OSSE and from the Department of Behavioral Health again. Thank you so much, and get home safely tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Anthony and Dr. Scott?
It's just me at this point.
Okay, terrific.